So I'm going to let you guys take it. But what I wanted to say is what shocked me most about the Colts was the, I guess I could say the lack of additions. They didn't really add much to this roster. They extended a lot of people. Do you think that means that, oh, Brad just dropped out again. He'll come back in a second. Steve, do you think that means that they're comfortable with what they have, the Colts?
I believe so, yes, and I think they should be. They were the 7th most injured team last year. So just having a healthy team in general. They added a piece, obviously, in the draft, a receiver and a D end. But I think they got good things coming for them. They were a younger team, so I do wish they added a bit more. But anytime you're adding Anthony Richardson and just a bunch of more, healthy younger guys, I think they're sitting pretty, honestly. And what was shocking to me last year is it was a rookie head coach, right? A rookie quarterback for 4 or 5 games, and then Gardner Minshew, and they go 9-8. I think if I remember right, they had a chance to go to the playoffs week 18, right?
They should have went if the dude didn't drop the pass,
right? Yeah, that's right.
And that's the thing I think a lot of people forget about the Texans, because everyone remembers the Texans season is so favorable and the Colts season less favorable. If in week 18 he doesn't drop that pass, he dropped a wide open pass. If he doesn't drop the pass, the Colts go to the playoffs and probably beat the Browns, and the Texans don't. So it was literally one drop pass, and the Colts could have been where the Texans were. One drop pass. Now, granted, CJ Stroud missed a couple games and they lost one of those, which probably contributed to that. So it's not that black and white. So yes, the Colts were that close to the playoffs. What I'm a little concerned with, and I didn't realize, because obviously we all know Anthony Richardson got hurt, missed most of last season. I thought he played more than he did. Did you guys realize he only finished one football game? He literally played 4 games.
I was going to say, he was hurt every game. Like, when you're watching him, you're like, all right, Anthony Richard goes to the sideline. See ya. Yep. You're done again. Like, it's just every single time. If that man does not figure out how to go out of bounds or slide or not take big hits, then this is going to be Joe Flacco's team. So it doesn't matter.
It's concerning because Minshew's now gone. And Brad, what I asked Steve first when you dropped out was, Colts didn't make many additions at all. In fact, they brought in Laquan Treadwell, wide receiver. Does that mean that they are comfortable with what they have? They think this team can make a playoff run. Do you think that's true?
I do. I actually do. Offensively, without Anthony Richardson, we're going to call it without Anthony Richardson, they weren't bad. They're like 13th defensive and offensive DVOA. They got the job done. Anthony Richardson will have to stay healthy, but I mean, it's not like he hasn't stayed healthy before, right? Like, it's not like he's a guy who consistently, well, granted, he played the 1 year of full-time starter at Florida where we were like, oh, this guy's going to have injury problems. Defensively, they can make improvements. They weren't great. I think bottom 3rd in defensive DVOA. They can get better. They don't have a ton of youth, though. That's my only problem with their defense, is like they don't have a ton of youth where I'm like, they're going to take the next step, right? Like, naturally, you think they're going to probably regress as they get older. Do they make the playoffs? Probably. But I actually think I'd play under their win totals, and I don't think an 8-win team is going to make the playoffs.
Me too. And you said it, you brought up the adjusted metrics, and I think that's interesting with the Colts, is because if you look at some of their stuff, I have it open right here. So like, let's look at their defense. It looks pretty good on paper. I mean, 10th in yards per carry allowed. The run defense at home, they're 8th in yards per carry allowed. Like, their actual surface level numbers look pretty good. Then you take into consideration the division they play in and their schedule. Then you look at some of those adjusted metrics, and it's not quite as impressive. So a little worried about that. That being said, they still play in the same division. They still have that same sort of schedule. But I was looking at it, and it might be tough to get the 9 wins. It sounds like Steve's more optimistic. If we're talking about a quarterback that now only has a 95-year-old backup that only finished one football game all last year. So I'm concerned.
Yeah, I get the concerns, and it's all going to be Anthony Richardson's one of the biggest wild cards in the NFL this year, honestly. We don't know. What did he complete 60% of his passes in those 4 or 5 games? I don't think I don't know if he's going to be that accurate, that dominant of a player. But what this head coach did with Jalen Hurts, I think he's a heck of a coach, honestly. And the thing is, here's my thing. When I was younger, I used to be excited. Oh, look at this team. They got great receivers, great running backs. Now I get excited about good O-lines and D-lines. I don't know if it's just handicapping or what it is, but this team is a top 5 O-line and maybe a top 7 D-line in the NFL. And,
They
and
are.
that alone will get you, like, that'll keep you competitive, first of all, and that'll get you right around 500, in my opinion, as long as you got decent weapons around it. I do worry about the defense a little bit, but this D-line is absolutely loaded, and I mean deep as well. There's backup guys on this team that could be starters on other teams. I mean, there's pressure coming from DeForest Buckner on the inside. I mean, there's Pay, there's Ebucom. I mean, there's just a ton of guys, and they drafted the number 1 defensive player in the draft, I think, in Latu, one of the best edge rushers there is, and they didn't even need him. They just said, you know what, he's there, he's available.
A luxury.
So, and then they, if you need to stop the run, Grover Stewart's just a humongous dude who can stuff the run. I just think they're so loaded on the lines that as long as Anthony Richardson can, take care of the ball, we'll see if Taylor can still run and he finds it. But I like this team, and then we'll go over the schedule later. But yeah, I think this team's going to have a good year.
I'm a little concerned about the defense, but the talent's there, and it's because if you remember when Grover Stewart was out, there was a few weeks where they were looking like a straight up bad defense. But maybe now that he's going into the season healthy, I just feel like the variance on the Colts defense is huge. I mean, could I see the defense being really good? Yeah, but I don't think it's crazy to think it could be bad. Also, I'm not too sold. To be honest, Prop Beaver put together he's going to give a rant on the Colts, and he kind of sold me a little bit. He's anti-Colts, Prop Beaver, so he kind of sold me a little on the anti-Colts message here. The couple of their easier games on their schedule are on the road. Like a couple of their easy games, you got at New England, at Minnesota. Like those are the games when you get New England and this year's Minnesota Vikings team on your schedule, that's supposed to be wins. They're both on the road. Like they could drop one of those games. And yeah, you know what? Let's pull the schedule up and take a
Denver
look at
too.
By the way, just FYI, last year they played the NFL's number 2 toughest schedule for overall defenses. They were also 6-0 against the spread as favorites. Their team's got to be better. It's not Gardner Minshew that you would think it's better this year. Their 2 DBs, by the way, we didn't talk about, which is a worry for the Colts. I mean, they're secondary. I'm not going to sit here and say they're elite, but those 2 DBs, I think it was Brent and who was the other guy?
anymore.
Yeah, I think they played, and Dallas Flowers. Anyways, they played like 4 or 5 games together. I mean, the injuries were, I'm not saying they're going to now be good just because they're playing together, but so I think the jury's still out on that a little bit.
Wow, so Prop Beaver, he's pro Colts. Yo, Prop Beaver's like,
get on, he's ready. Well, we agreed last time too much, so.
Yeah, you guys were on the same page about the Jets. Yeah, no, he's just going to come on at the end and give like a rant, anti-Colts rant. So probably you got the schedule on the screen. You do? All right, guys. So let's go through. And it's not necessarily that I agree with what Prop Beaver says. And you'll hear in a second. It's also a weird schedule. There are easy teams on it, but like I said, some of their easier games are on the road. And if you look at Week 4 against Pittsburgh, you would assume home against the Steelers, that should be a win. I don't like how they beat the shit out of the Steelers last year. That leads me to believe they might drop that game. And I know that's not necessarily a great indicator, but I remember I had the Colts in that game, and they beat the hell out of Pittsburgh. So the fact that Pittsburgh gets their revenge immediately, I could see them dropping that game to Pittsburgh. And a lot of their wins on their schedule, I could see as potential losses. So it's tough to get to 9.
Yeah, it's funny because like when you look at their schedule, like you think, you open the season with the Texans, then go Packers, then Bears, you're like, okay, we pick up a win at the Bears. That's your expectation, right? But then you welcome back in the Steelers on the revenge angle before you go on the 2-game road trip. I know it's you have Jags and then Titans, interdivision. That's always scary, always on the road. So I count that as 1-1 right there. Then they play the Colts, Texans again, and then travel to Minnesota. It's one of those like situations where on paper, if I were to like just circle spots where I'd be like, yeah, they can get to 10 wins easily, I could do it. But then if I think about like a logistical standpoint and then just a schedule breakdown, that's where I start to find like my troubles with this team, because we know all too well what happens when you start off slow. It's not like you're just going to instantly pick it up. You're actually losing ground trying to pick up ground, and that's my only worry about them. But again, Anthony Richardson stays healthy, there's no reason this team can't be good. Offensively, they're going to be good. Josh Downs, we saw, went down with a high ankle sprain. That probably will linger into the beginning of the season, but Pittman's there. Adonai Mitchell's massive pickup. I don't care what anyone says. And then we all know Jonathan Taylor. So offensively, they're good enough, right? Like if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy. But it's a long season, and if this dude is diving for the pylon and taking hits like he wants to, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. And it's what he had a shoulder injury. I think that's what scares me too. Is like shoulder injury, like
I heard he
especially for
re-aggravated
a running
it in
quarterback
June,
who doesn't
right?
want to slide, doesn't want to get out of bounds.
Yeah, I heard he was like still dealing with it as recent as June. Was still dealing with that.
Wow.
I don't even know if he's 100%. So, all right, we're kind of ganging up on Steve here. Steve's the only pro Colts. So, Steve, why don't you take us through the schedule and show us your path to 9?
So I agree with you guys. The start is not ideal. First of all, I think they're equipped to beat teams like Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh relies on getting to the quarterback, relies on that front pressure. They have an O-line, and if it's early in the season, they're still healthy. This is an offensive line. I'm not going to say they're on the Lions level, but they can bully some teams. They can. And if Jonathan Taylor gets it going like his rookie year and this O-line stays healthy, they can just kind of control teams and kind of, keep them away from Anthony Richardson. Obviously, he's going to run as well. But here's my thing, and what made me really like the over 8.5 wins is if you look at the last 5 games, it's a 5-0 run. I mean, obviously, it's not a guarantee, but I mean, we're talking.
Joking.
Yeah. The Patriots, Denver, Tennessee at home, Giants, and Jacksonville. Jacksonville's not a guarantee, but it's at home. But I mean, you could 4-1, right? At the worst. I mean, they can finish strong, but like Brad was saying, if you get off to a tough start, that can affect your momentum, your confidence, and what you're doing as well. But if they can hang in there, they got a great stretch to end it. That's where I'm looking at.
I don't disagree that those last 5 could be 4-1, especially with the bye week thrown in there, going into Mile High off the bye. I don't think that's crazy, but that means we have to find 5 wins in the first chunk, which I think is more challenging.
And well, I mean, it depends on what you think of Minnesota, but I think that's one, obviously.
I'll give you Minnesota, maybe the Bears, but I also who knows what the Bears? But let's give them the Bears, rookie quarterback. Colts essentially have a rookie quarterback too, though.
And they're at home against Miami. And I wasn't on to talk Miami. I know, I understand.
I'm big on Miami, man.
I get that, but anytime Miami plays a tough team, and I don't know if it's a great matchup. I'm going to be honest with you. Secondary versus this Miami offense, maybe it's not a good matchup. But anytime I see Miami play a good team, it is just a struggle. But again, now that I think about it, that is a tough matchup in the passing game for sure. I mean, the speed that Miami has on offense, that's tough.
And Dolphins have a pretty easy lead up into that game. Titans at home at Patriots. Obviously, that's going to be a tough one, but not tough from them winning, but just an emotional standpoint. But then they after the Colts, they play the Cardinals at home. So
yeah, and like you guys said, I think because the last 4 or 5 are hard, I think the start of the season is going to be key for this one. If you can get that Houston win at home, if you can beat the 3 home games out of the first 4 with the Bears, Steelers, and Houston. You go 3-1 there. I think we're looking at an over pretty easily.
If you get 3-1 there, I don't know. I don't know if Houston's dropping their opener, man. That's team.
No, I don't. Yeah, no, it's gonna be tough. Yeah, and I forgot how'd they do last year against each other. I don't even remember.
I'll pull it up right now.
Okay.
So they beat Houston in Houston last year, and then lost them in Week 18. They should have beat them twice because remember the drop pass. That was the last game of the season.
Yep, that's right.
So they actually should have beat the Texans twice.
Decent matchup. I think Houston's being overblown a little bit too, as well. But.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure because they got a lot of cool pieces, a lot of hype. That being said, I don't know. I still would take Houston in that Week 1 game, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But, all right. Anything else you guys want to add before we hear Prop Beaver's anti-Colts rant?
No.
Bring it on.
All right, Prop Beaver, you want to switch the screen over to 2 people?
Kings, Queens, you can hear me, everybody?
Unmute your mic in OBS too.
Oh. Okay. OBS
right, tell us what you
people,
think.
hello. So for everybody who stuck around for my anti-Indianapolis Colts rant, it's not that I hate Anthony Richardson or Shane Steichen. In fact, I actually love both of them. I love Anthony Richardson. Watching him in Florida, I had a bit of disdain for him, I must say. Watching some of those Florida bets. I wasn't in love with some of his decision-making, Jesus Christ, but a lot of people that I respected through the draft process were really high on him, and then matching him with Shane Steichen, who did wonders for Jalen Hurts in his career, then also worked with Justin Herbert really well. I was really excited for the two to work together. Now, the problem is, it's not that I'm really down on the duo working together. I'm just down on the Colts as a whole. This is still a rookie quarterback that is essentially going to be working here. And the thing is that Anthony Richardson, yes, he did play 4 games last season, but he really only played 1 full game last season. He left 3 games early, a knee and an ankle ailment, a concussion, and then he left with a shoulder injury. And then on top of that, people could say, oh, well, Gardner Minshew started most of the season for the Colts last year. Gardner Minshew really wasn't even that bad. He had a 1.5% passing DVOA. That was roughly on par with Kyler Murray, not far behind out of what the Eagles got out of Jalen Hurts, and Richardson had a 4.6% passing DVOA. That was not that much better by an appreciable amount. Do we really think that we're going to get this insane, out of the world, passing DVOA out of Anthony Richardson, season 2, coming crazy? I just don't know if we could really expect that with the weaponry that he has around him. I think that Michael Pittman is a solid NFL wide receiver. Adonai Mitchell, speedster. I think that he's a solid add in the draft, but I don't know if we can expect that much out of him in year 1. And then Josh Downs, just today, suffered a high ankle sprain. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, I was reading. So just right there, I don't really know if they're going to start off strong. And when I was looking at the beginning of that schedule, I forget what Jabbo was saying. He was saying potentially 3-1. Now, this may sound a bit crazy. I think they could go as bad as 0-8 to start the season. I really do. I hate the start of the schedule for the Indianapolis Colts. Let me try and pull that back up on the screen for you guys. Actually, I don't know if I can because I'm trying to multitask right now. Houston, Green Bay, Chicago. Yes. Caleb Williams on the road in Indy. Yes, I think they could do it. Jacksonville, Tennessee, Miami, Houston. I got to be honest. I don't really know if they're actually better than a single one of those teams. I truly do mean that with you guys. I understand that the Colts offensive line is better, but when we get to the defensive side of the ball, that's where I just really fall out of love with this team. The defensive line is good, but when you get to the secondary, we're talking about a secondary that has Kenny Moore on the inside, but then a competition between a 2022 UDFA and a 7th rounder from last season. I mean, that's just simply dreadful. I just feel like we're expecting too much of a leap for this team, that just because they got Tony Richardson and the fantasy points are coming, we're expecting this team to make this massive leap as a whole. I'm sorry. I think that Kyle was asking me the other day, who is a team that could be worse than the Patriots? Holy shit, this sounds crazy. I think the Colts could be worse than the Patriots. I really do. I think the Colts could be the team that is worse than the Patriots, guys. I'm sorry. I know it sounds absolutely nuts, but if we're going to get this guy, Tony Richardson, who, A, is playing in potentially his rookie season, B, had a ton of things that, A, were very promising in college, but B, were very concerning in college, and then C, has a defense that I think is bottom 5 in the league behind him. I don't know if he's going to be, if this is a great bet to be finishing with 9 wins. I think there's a ton of value on the under at 8.5. So I think this is one of my top 5, maybe top 3 futures bets this season.
Here's the thing. First of all, he just said that Tennessee and New England are better than Indianapolis. So it kind of throws everything else he said out of the way with the credibility. I mean, I think at that point it's done. And second of all, he said he doesn't see them making a big jump. I just need them to win the same amount of games. That's all I need. And I know we talked about the schedule, but again, what you're also not talking about is the last 5 games are all maybe 5-0 games, maybe 4-1. So I get a little bit what he's saying. I don't think the secondary, I don't think this defense is some elite defense, but we've seen it with other quarterbacks. You say Anthony Richardson wasn't good in college, but he is also now sitting behind a top 5 offensive line. We've seen it with Jared Goff in Detroit. An offensive line makes your job 100 times easier. I am not going to sit here and say I think Anthony Richardson is some great passer. He's going to be some elite, accurate guy down the field. But if he doesn't make mistakes, uses his legs the right way, they can rely on this running game to just pound you. Because as long as Jonathan Taylor comes in shape, it makes a huge difference. There's a reason. And by the way, 12 of the 14 playoff teams last year were in the top 12, 13 in pressure rates. This is one of those teams as well. They all had good low lines. There's a reason the good O lines and all that at last. But he's only talking about the bad stuff, and then he's going to sit here and say that Tennessee Titans are better and that the New England Patriots are better. Come on.
That was a stretch.
That was a stretch. Yeah, I did agree with him on the last 2 teams, but Brad, I'll let you rebuttal.
I think
just,
me and Brad are on the same page, whereas then the truth is like somewhere in between you
Yeah.
guys.
me too.
Yeah, I think that there'll be a 7-8 win team, and like giving them 8 is kind of generous. I think if Richardson goes down, they have Flacco behind, right? Old as dirt, but he's just going to be handing the ball off, and they're going to be handing the ball off to a good offensive line, which will win more games than they'll lose. But for me to call them 9-10 win team, I think I can't go that far unless Anthony Richardson takes that next step. And that, if you're going to go do that, I think you might as well just go ahead and put a ticket on Anthony Richardson. Was it most improved player, comeback player, whatever the award is? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I haven't been out 7 or 8 as well. Steve, had I known that you were big on the Colts, I would have set it up to have you guys on the screen at the same time. We should have, because I didn't realize that you were pro Colts.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say I sprinkled them to win the division, but I should have told that to be.
Yo, you should have seen. He was like,
I mean, what are we talking? Guys, they played to go to the playoffs at the end of the last year. I didn't have a chance to talk Texans, but again, they are overrated in my opinion. CJ Stroud, who I love, I'm an Ohio State fan. He's going to regress a little. NFL defenses make their adjustments to him. They've done it to Mahomes. They've done it to where they still can have some down years, but that we're not talking to Houston Texans. But yeah, this is an interesting talk because we'll see. I think it's going to rely on the defense. We'll see.
Yeah, I can't wait to have the Colts Texans Week 1 talk in a few weeks. I'll make sure you're both on the screen for it.
Just kidding.
All right, let's talk some college football. Steve, thanks for joining.
right.
Clear his name so they could see, so they could give him a follow. If you guys don't already follow Steve, puts out great stuff, has his own YouTube channel. Just a bet outside it right there. I tagged him in the tweet as well. So if you follow me on Twitter, make sure you guys give him a follow. Steve, thanks, man. We'll talk. Let me know. Shoot me a message. Let me know what team